all right. Two webinars in 2 days. It is it is webinar week here. So, but this one, very different topics. This one, we are all about CMMC, and I'm excited for this one because we have four guests here today to share their experience and tell us what it's been like to be in the trenches with preparing for or even getting their CMMC level 2 certification. So appreciate the guys here that are joining me with this. We'll give everyone a second. There's people streaming in here. We always like to kick these off by asking people where they're joining from. So in the chat, make sure you have it turned on to everyone, not just hosts and panelists, and tell us what city and state you're joining from. I can already see from the names that I see up in the Boston area. I see Washington. I see Arizona. There's definitely some familiar names here. Everett, Boston, there we go. Hey, Freddie, good to see you. We'll see you in another hour, too. Boise, Canada, very good. Salmon Arm, BC, very good. Pittsburgh, New Brunswick. We have a fair number of Canadians. Awesome. Mountainside, New Jersey, Denver, Colorado. Florida, we got all the coasts. All right, awesome. Well, thank you everyone for doing that. Steve is already raising his hand. I'm not sure if you need to do that, Steve, but you have raised your hand to ask a question. All right, well, let's go ahead and get going here. We'll move through the slides. A couple of housekeeping notes. This is being recorded and it will be shared with you after the session. So don't worry about scribbling down lots of notes if you don't need to. And then this should be hosted on our YouTube channel and on our website after as well. So if you have questions, please use the Q&A box. It definitely helps us keep track of them rather than being in the chat amongst all the other chats that might be happening. And of course, the chat is open. So thank you already for introducing where you are. If you want to share a sentiment or a comment or a kudos or whatever, feel free to throw that in the chat as we move along. So, want to talk about. This is a poll. Yeah, sorry. So we've been taking these polls as we've been doing these CMMC webinars. So, if you would be willing to take a moment and check one of those 5 boxes. I think our hosts and panelists cannot vote, so I know there's at least one we're certified that will not be able to check that box. But we will hear from Tyler directly in a little bit here. And then I'm going to introduce folks, and then we're going to get into the conversation. So, all right, I think we can just leave that poll going. And I'll move into here. So where do we stand today? Obviously, CMMC clauses are starting to appear in defense contracts, and it is truly actually happening. There's been a lot of skepticism for a long time whether this will happen or not. There still seems to be folks out there that are not entirely convinced, but it certainly is. We know a lot of primes are asking for shops to fill out their SPRS or their SPRS scores and enter those into the website. And they want to see progress or scores above a certain number. It all depends on the prime, but they are doing this actively right now. It was very interesting to see, and maybe some of you saw it on comments on LinkedIn, on posts about it. But L3Harris recently announced that they want all of their vendors to be level 2 certified if they host CMMC by July 30th, which I thought was something else. So I guess it just goes to show that although November is a date in time where the government has said that that contracts will start having these clauses in there, they have not actually mandated that a shop has to have CMMC certification, but it's the primes and the OEMs that are really taking this seriously and pushing this hard onto their vendor base. All right. And so, yeah, the window is shrinking. But the true guests of this are these gentlemen here. Thank you again, gentlemen. Let's do some intros. We'll do left to right. So Taylor, why don't you introduce you and ZYCI to us a bit? Oh, you're muted.
There we
There you
go.
go.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. So my name is Taylor Alexander. I'm the Information Systems Security Manager over at ZYCI. We are a defense and aerospace manufacturing shop located in Chamblee, Georgia, serving a wide variety of customers you folks know. And we have been on the journey for about 2 years now. With all the different expansions we've had to do, but currently we have posted a 110 SPRS score, and we're just finishing out our poem and getting ready for assessment now.
Very exciting. You are far down the path. Awesome. Um, Jamie, why don't you introduce yourself next?
Hey everybody, I'm Jamie Marzilli from Marzilli Machine Company, and we are a aerospace defense CNC machine shop, and we have a 94 out of 110 on our score, and we're past the halfway point on our journey, and I think it's important for us to continue this. It's going to be a big deal in our industry, and we need to be at the forefront of it.
Okay. And Jamie's up near closer to Providence than Boston, but up in that area, right?
Yeah, we just moved to Seekonk, Mass.
Okay. It's interesting you say 94, but you're about halfway through your journey. Maybe that's the 90% done, 90% left to go kind of situation. But maybe we'll talk more about that in a minute. So, Denny, tell us a little bit about NMC and yourself.
Denny Smith, NMC Incorporated. We're in Indiana, Southwest Indiana, and we've been in business for 61 years now. And we're in our journey. We started probably 5 years ago, but our last SPRS score was minus 17, but we were about 65% of the way there. So, and since then we're going through our remediation phase. Actually, getting ready to hire a consultant to do that, and customers are pushing us more than the government is. We do defense and aerospace. We're going to follow through with it and get there. We're probably looking to be ready for assessment in September, October. Migrated everything to GCC High, which was we're still working through some bugs. I didn't even get some of the Pro Shop emails last week, so that was a Microsoft issue. So we're working through that. Our last big purchase is going to be new on-site servers. So we're trying to decide which way on-site servers and a new phone system. So that's our last two big things this year, and I'm ready to be done with that part of it because it's a financial burden. So that's something else to work through, but we're close. So.
Okay. Well, and before we went live, Denny was telling us that they now occupy 9 buildings in his little town, and so I imagine the actual IT infrastructure alone is just complicated with that much going on. So, all right, and last but certainly not least, Tyler from CPC. Tyler, tell us about yourself.
Tyler Kowalczik. I'm the Vice President at Component Products. We're an aerospace and defense manufacturing company located in Mukilteo. We've been in business since 1967, and we're CMMC Level 2 certified.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because we have nothing actually interesting to look at except these fine gentlemen. So we're just going to kind of get into the conversation here. And let me just move my window around. Perfect. Very good. As we're going, if you have questions that come up, please put them in the chat. We might answer them sort of in line, or we might wait till the end. So just depending on what they are and how it can flow into the conversation. I don't know who wants to take this one first. Denny, you said you've been working on this for 5 years. It's a very long time. We know that the requirement to comply with the NIST 800-171 standards started coming out in I think 2016 or 17. So it has been out for a long time. But we know this is a big undertaking. What was the sort of moment or incident that made you realize this was not just going to be a simple IT checklist project, and a fundamental shift, and when you decided to go all in on doing this? So maybe we'll start with you, Denny, since you have been working on it a long time.
We started, one of our customers originally flowed down the original requirements. It was 5 or 6 years ago, and we were pretty flabbergasted, I guess. You might have to be an IT person to read some of it and understand it. So it's almost like reading a legal document, and then you need to be a lawyer to read it. And that's not us. That's not what we do every day. We're machinists. We've got quality guys. It's just not us. So we started it, then we kind of backed off, and we put some things in place internally on our own. We kind of worked with our last MSP. They weren't really up to speed to where they could handle us, and especially going through this. So we basically had to fire them, and we did. We weren't getting the support we needed, so we found another MSP to work with. So they're working through that with us. They've helped us find consultants to push us through the rest of this project and help us walk along beside us. They've been here internally. And we've just kind of found people as we go, and that seem like and feel like experts, and they can talk plain to you, and you can understand what some of these requirements are.
Yeah. Okay. And was it like one major customer, or do you have others that started flowing things down to you as well?
It was one major customer, and they're now probably not even in our top 5.
Okay.
They flowed the requirements down, but they're the ones still sending us drawings they're not supposed to send us through email.
We're going to get to that specific question.
Yeah. So they're not one of our top customers now, and we're actually farther along than they are at meeting the requirements. So
okay.
But we see the writing on the wall and the benefits to it. I think as long as the government will hold everybody accountable, like
sure,
they're supposed to do. So,
all right, thank you for that, Tyler. Let's go to you next.
Yeah, so we, heard the rumors of cybersecurity standards that were going to be imposed on suppliers like back in, I would say, 2021. We initially planned to just achieve CMMC level 1 compliance, but we, later decided that this could potentially be a good opportunity to diversify our customer base. So we just decided to go all in and pursue CMMC level 2. And yeah, it's been, I don't know if anyone, I guess I can understand why people maybe didn't believe CMMC was going to be a thing, because it feels like it's been such a long time that everyone's been hearing about it. But yeah, we hired consultants, we evaluated different MSPs, and ended up finding an MSP that was qualified, and they helped guide us through the process to implementing the controls and got us through our assessment. And here we are, 4 or 5 years later, CMMC level 2 certified.
Very good. So for you, it was a bit more strategic. It wasn't a specific customer pushing something down to you. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you traditionally have been more commercial aerospace and decided you wanted to kind of lean into defense.
Yeah, defense isn't a significant portion of our business right now. We'd like it to be more. It's there, but we did see some flow downs, but it seemed like it seemed like maybe the buyers didn't know that, what they were buying, because they were asking for spacers or standards and then throwing NIST 800-171 on that. And so it just seemed like maybe they were confused, but we decided to just go for it anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go with Taylor next.
All right. Well, I think we stand with everyone when we say we weren't sure this was actually going to happen early on, but when it started becoming apparent that it was, that's when we got serious. That's when I got hired on. And then it was a round of gap assessments, talking with MSPs, deploying systems. changing things multiple times over because we built a new 60,000 square foot facility and there's changes going into that. Um, and there's really no one size fits all for any of this. But once it became apparent that this was happening, and once we started seeing some companies drop off, which brought more business to us, it honestly created a very good positive loop where it was becoming easier to justify the costs because we were seeing business coming in more rapidly. So
Okay.
it became an easier thing for us just once we saw the opportunity.
Okay. So a little bit of each. Jamie, how about you? Was it coming from a customer or an opportunity? And you're on mute right now.
I am on mute. Um, a little bit of both. So probably right after we did Pro Shop in 2020, we were doing a lot of work. We had found a lot of success working with tier ones, a little bit less, heavy on the paperwork requirements, a little bit more hand holding. And my tier ones that we were working with were reporting directly to primes like Raytheon and General Dynamics and folks like that. And those folks were made aware that this was coming years before the rest of us knew what was going on. And so what happened was, I think maybe on one of the tiers that we were reporting to for Raytheon, it was like somebody lit a firecracker off, and then all of a sudden, the flow down requirements landed on us. And my company was in the middle of an evolution with the Pro Shop and the paperless and all the Industry 4.0 stuff. And so I said, this is a good time for us to just, if we're going to have to get off of like Windows personal networking and file sharing, like what we were doing anyway, we might as well build a legitimate server and start connecting everything together and start getting things ready to go. And so that was what we did. And so what we were able to do, and we were able to do this a lot cheaper because just electronics, just everything was cheaper 4 or 5 years ago, was we built the infrastructure. And we didn't know what to do with it, but we knew just the working inside of the shop would get a lot easier and that our data would be safer. And we had actually connected with a company called Nectar Labs who was starting to kind of get into this stuff. And they kind of siloed our entire company. So with that, we were able to meet the requirements at that time, that which was NIST. And that was enough to satisfy the primes that we were working with, that we were good enough to stay inside the supply chain. And then we got in front of, probably about 2 years after that, maybe 2022, 2023, General Dynamics started cracking down because the government's they've moved the field goal posts on this almost every year for the last 3 years. But every year they're like, if you don't do this, we're not going to send you contracts anymore. And I think the reason that they had to push the field goal post was because of, this is kind of tied to the silver tsunami that we talk about a lot. So if you're 60, 65 years old and your biggest customer says, if you don't build a brand new computer system and put in all these things you don't understand about, we're not going to send you work anymore. I think they were honestly shocked how many people just went, whatever, we don't care. I was going to retire this year anyway. And that's kind of what some of the other guys have been talking about, that as people were like, I'm not, for whatever their personal reasons were, they didn't want to be bothered. It opened up a lot of opportunities, and we were just like, hey, whatever, we're already trying anyway. If you help us and teach us what to do, we'll do it. And that's how we started doing work directly for primes just by having that attitude. And they all at that point had their own rating systems. Like a lot of them were color coded. And as long as you met their amber or green rating, they figured you were good enough. And that was what we built. We built to the General Dynamics system until they kind of got things settled and they moved from NIST to CMMC. So we did it because we saw two things. We see the trends in the industry and how there are these great filters that come along. Like back in the day, it was 5-axis. You didn't have 5-axis, you weren't going to be able to play with the big boys. Then it was ISO. Then it was AS9100. And now it's going to be cybersecurity. And we wanted to be ahead of the curve instead of behind the curve. And we saw that little anecdotal, like they kind of were like, hey, if you help us out with this, we said, hey, man, this is something we can actually leverage.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think you're spot on that it will, with the silver tsunami and with the number of shops that are retiring and maybe just closing down or not wanting to tackle it. Maybe they do only 10% defense work, and they're like, this is just way too much of a hassle. I'm just going to focus on all my other industries. That's opening up opportunity. So let's get right into architecture. Tyler, you went with an Azure instance, and you're isolating your endpoints so they're not in scope. And Taylor, and sounds like Denny as well, and maybe Jamie, you're going more for a full on-prem server tech stack kind of setup. Tyler, why don't you talk a little bit first about your decision with how you were doing this architecturally?
Yeah. So we're using a cloud-centric architecture. We are hosted in Microsoft Azure Government and Microsoft GCC High, and then we're using like a zero trust architecture so that we actually were able to keep our local environment out of scope. And there were a couple of things that we needed to do in order to make that a possibility. But essentially, our managed endpoints are considered a part of our system boundary. Even though they are, connected to the internet through our local network, the local network here is just seen as a path to the internet. They're not, they're not talking or communicating with other devices on the network except for like, outbound connections to like printers and whatnot. But even then it's limited. Like we have a policy that says that we can't CUI's only allowed to stay within the approved environment. We can't, put it on a USB, go transfer it somewhere else. We also can't print it as well. So that combination of policy restrictions as well as this, cloud-centric zero trust architecture limited our assessment scope and actually made it kind of easier, made the compliance story a little bit easier for us.
With the, not printing or not putting it on USB drives, is that strictly policy, or do you have?
Yeah, it's policy. We do have some technical controls in place, like on our endpoints, like they're all managed via Microsoft Intune. There's a default deny policy for USB devices or USB storage devices. So I just had this the other day where I actually needed to use an SD card reader to image an OS for Raspberry Pi, and I couldn't do it because of our default denial policy, and had to ask them to temporarily lift that for my device so I could do it. But yeah, we do have some approved USB devices that we use for transferring CNC files to and from machines. We can talk about that more later if you want, but those are the only devices that are allowed to be used. They are encrypted devices, and they're only allowed to be used on specific endpoints as well.
There's a question here about, and maybe I'll open it up to the rest of you guys as well, whoever wants to jump in first. Some of you have gone on-prem, some cloud, hybrid. What made you make the decision to choose whichever way you went? You want to go, Tyler? Jamie?
I can go. Honestly, I went with what we went
And
with.
Jamie, you're pretty quiet still. I apologize. Maybe Tyler, would you give us a shot while Jamie adjusts his mic?
Sure. Well, so we ended up finding a qualified MSP, and they use a cloud-centric zero trust architecture approach. They're actually like fully remote. I don't even think they have like a physical location for for their headquarters. But they, the CEO of that company, the one who was helping me design out our systems, said that this would be really helpful for us. It's just more flexible and would help us to meet the controls kind of more simply. So that was kind of the basis of our decision. It was came through a recommendation, and I do think it did make the assessment a lot easier. I don't know about cost, because I mean GCC High is expensive, Azure Government's expensive, but I do know that like assessment costs tend to rise the more assets you have within scope.
Mm-hmm.
So this was really, I think the drive was to try and limit our scope.
Got it. Okay. How about Taylor? Why don't you go next?
Alrighty, so we have a hybrid system here at ZYCI, and for us, it was more by matter of necessity. At the start of the process, we did a lot similarly to what Tyler was doing. We went with a cloud-first infrastructure. But as I've learned, this is the first time I've worked with a manufacturing company. The needs are just a little different here. We had to use some on-prem stuff. If you can avoid it, I would do that. We're also hosted in GCC High. I don't think I need to tell anyone the costs of doing that. But Microsoft is generally set up for this kind of compliance work, so we went that way. Um, yeah, again, for us, it was just mostly out of necessity. If we could have done it all in the cloud without it breaking the bank even worse, we would have done that. But this is just the way that works for us. There's no one size fits all solution for every company. It's going to depend on what the company needs.
Okay. Jamie, how about you?
Oh, no, is that better?
Not terribly. Sorry.
How about now?
Yes, now it's better.
All right. I don't know why, but the adjuster just keeps moving backwards for no reason. We decided to do it all on premise because we could do most of the work. That was the truth. We had the ability to run the LAN wires. We had the ability to build the server, and then we brought in a consultant to kind of get everything up and running after we had built the infrastructure. And we were very concerned about ongoing costs to maintenance it and keep it going versus upfront costs. And we decided to go with one large upfront cost to build it to reduce the amount of maintenance costs going forward.
Okay. And Denny, how about yourself?
Originally, I was completely pretty adamant I didn't want to go with Microsoft GCC High, but really our MSP and then our first consultant we started with last year, one of our consultants we went through a couple of consultants before we found one we liked and that we felt like was going to help us. They talked me into it really as being the best option for using as far as managing files, sharing files with vendors and customers. Inspection reports on the quality side, some of our customers can't handle large files, so we had to have a solution. Whether we created a portal or we had to have SharePoint, which that then throws that to have to be in the GCC High to protect that and make sure we have the correct security. So that's a lot of what was sharing files and storing files. That's why we went with GCC High and went that way, because I was pretty adamant against it because I knew it was going to be expensive. And it's we've got 40 users on it, so it's I don't know the final cost yet, but it looks like it's going to be between $40,000 and $50,000 a year for GCC High alone. So that's the annual costs that we've got to pay. So go ahead.
Oh, do you have them all on the same type of license, or do you have some on lower licenses and some on higher?
The way our MSP and even we use another consultant for the GCC High migration. If you don't put, the way I understand it, now I'm not an IT guy, but if you don't have them all on the same, you can have some on commercial, you can have some on the GCC High tenant. But if you have some commercial, some GCC High, you have to manage them separately, which means they can't interact back and forth even when they're in the same building internally. So that sounds like a headache, and it sounds like a lot of extra management. And we just decided to say everybody's going to be on the same level, and then we can share files back and forth through SharePoint. And we're currently setting up our SharePoint to do that with our MSP, and then we're going to have separate folders in SharePoint for our vendors and our customers to share.
So do your machinists have accounts on this system?
All of our supervisors and setup machinists have accounts.
Set up. Okay. Okay.
And then, which throws up another problem on your shop floor is how you handle pro shop computers versus single sign-on computers. So we had to figure that out to be able to restrict printing and downloading, and you can do that. We worked through that and figured that out on just our pro shop computers. Basically, all they can do is pro shop. So, and they can look at drawings, they can't download them, they can't print them. So it's been a lot, but we're close. Really, the main, besides buying the servers and we've got the phones. We just got brand new phones last year. Now we got to get new phones. So if anybody wants
you're providing phones for all the same people that have email addresses.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Hey, just to chime in here real quick, you don't have to do that. Get with me after this call. There's a cheaper way to do it where you don't have to buy phones. Just get with me after this call.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested.
Yeah, and maybe Taylor or Tyler, when we did our dry run last week, you guys were talking about having a different level of a GCC high account that was far cheaper for most employees, and only a couple or a few had the high. Can you maybe elaborate for everyone's benefit and for Denny's?
Yeah, of course. So in the GovCloud, GCC, or GCC High, there's a few different licensing options that you guys can take advantage of. I would normally recommend for your project managers, people that are going to be emailing a lot, office staff, generally hook those folks up with a G5 license. They're the expensive license, but it has everything they need, all the storage they need. That can be a kind of one and done thing. But they also offer F3 licenses, which is great for janitorial staff if they're going to be working in areas where there's paper CUI. That can be good for a driver who doesn't need to use email much, but still needs to have access to some parts of ProShop because they do logistic work. They come into contact with it. Those licenses are much cheaper. I mean, it's about a 1/3 price difference between a G5 license and an F3 license. And business standard licenses are available in GCC High now. Just get with your IT guy or get with a solution provider. You can build a licensing stack that is going to cut a lot off of that final bill. If we didn't do that, our costs would be, instead of being about $40,000 a year, it would be right around 55 to 60 if we had just gotten G5 licenses for everyone. So customize your plan and it'll save your pocket.
Anything to add to that, Tyler? I know you did some.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the only person in our business that has G5, and that's just kind of, you need to have at least one that has it for certain security features that I don't know all the reasons why. Most people, for us, they can get away with G3. It is missing some of like the premium, features like, they don't get like Power Automate access and things like that. But and then we have a few that just have F3s. The F3s are pretty limited. You can only use the web version of Microsoft Outlook or Microsoft 365 applications. You can't use the desktop versions, and you only have 2 gigabytes of storage. But for people that don't email a whole lot, it's probably the best way to go.
Okay, that's useful. Thank you, guys. That's awesome. Jamie, let's see. I think we've probably talked about the architecture side, unless there's anything else that anyone wants to kind of talk about. If not, let's go down to shop floor a little bit. We already touched on it, but there was a question. How does the hardening of G-code transfer to the machines get handled? Tyler, I know you're using encrypted USB drives. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit. Jamie, since your network is air-gapped, are you still just transferring it with DNC? So maybe let's start with you, Jamie.
Yes, our system is completely enclosed, and we are sending it. It never leaves. It just goes in from the server directly to the machines. No USBs.
Can you turn up your volume a little bit? And maybe there's an adaptive setting. It thinks it's smarter than you are, but
I've tried all of the adaptive settings. I'm watching it move down as I'm talking to you.
Okay.
Yeah, I told it can auto adjust. Is that any better?
It's still a little quiet, but
I can't wait. I'm sorry, what was the question?
G code. So you have your machines. Are they on a separate network than your other computers in the front office? And
Yes. Yep. They are encapsulated inside the server, inside a protected VM.
okay. And Tyler, tell us a little bit about your system. I know some of its policies, some of its controls of those USB drives.
Yeah, so we have a check-in, check-out process for the encrypted USB drives that we have. Those encrypted USB drives are only allowed to be used on certain devices, and those are the devices where people are posting their CNC programs, and then they just put it on the USB drive and carry it over to the machine. But there are a couple controls related to media accountability that you have to satisfy in order for this to work. But we decided to do that instead of network connecting our machines for a couple of reasons. One, we weren't really I don't think we necessarily need the convenience of connecting our machines to the network. And two, a lot of these machines are running like Windows XP or some super outdated operating system. So it's nice to air gap them.
Okay, very good. Taylor or Denny, how are you guys handling G code and transfer to machines?
We're using USBs as well, but we do it through policy and controls within GCC High. They set a policy that only this serial number on this USB is allowed to use, and then we manage that weekly. They have to check them in, check them out. Same person. They're not supposed to share them. When they get checked back in, we format. I think the original requirement was format 3 times. So we do that.
You just format 3 times in a row?
Yep.
What?
Yeah. So yeah, well, that's what we're doing right now, and we've looked at the encrypted USBs, and that's what we're doing. We're probably going to change that after talking with some of our consultants, or what I learned today. I mean, it's something every week. We learn something different. So, and our MSP is constantly learning new things. And hey, well, we could switch this up, and this would be better off for us and you guys in the long run. So.
Sure.
It's always something, but right now, that's how we use it. We don't have them connected to the network. And some of our machines, the older they get, the Windows version is older in the background, and they don't connect as well to networks, which can lead into more money to spend if you want a VLAN or something.
Right.
So.
Okay, very good. Interesting. Taylor, how about yourself? How are you guys handling G code?
So we're doing it much of the same way for now. Encrypted thumb drives, whitelisting policies, assigned thumb drives for employees, and all of our machines are air gapped. And that's fine for now, but we're also in the process of integrating industrial control systems to be able to manage the machines. It's just a bit difficult of a task. As Denny said, most of these machines are going to be running Windows XP. I've seen Windows 95 on some of these. So on the IT side, I mean, these are just very vulnerable operating systems. Anybody can effectively walk right into them if they're on the network. So the challenge for us is making sure that there's some way to get information from the machines, but nothing can travel by wire back to them. We can get the data we need, but still keep them secure. And just to let everyone know, operational technology attacks are a very big attack vector. Russia's trying to do it to Ukraine as well as other parts of their defense industrial base. If they can fry a machine, they can stop production, and it helps the war effort. So keep an eye on those things, folks.
Okay, great advice. Yeah, the one way is interesting. So if you want to do machine monitoring or understand what's happening on the machine, but not be able to hack into it inbound, that's interesting. Let's see here. There seems to be a bunch of questions about phones, and you guys already brought it up, so maybe we'll go there for a second longer. How are you handling cell phones? iOS is not FIPS compliant. Are you only using Android phones? Taylor, you talked about, and Kenny Williams in the chat is talking about using Teams on their phones. Yeah, let's talk about phones for a second.
Well, sure. Let's go into it. So iPhones, I'm sorry, that is just not true. They are FIPS compliant. If you were to walk into Congress right now and started looking at the government issued cell phones that carry classified information, they'd all be iPhones. You can absolutely use an iPhone for this. It just has to be an iPhone that's after generation 8. That's when the FIPS 140-2 compliance starts going in. Androids are actually more difficult because if that Android phone does not have the Samsung Knox security variant or a FIPS 140-2 certification, then you can't use that phone. It can have an Android operating system, but the hardware does not support it. But that's just on iPhone versus Android. As far as transferring VoIP systems, we went another route. We didn't want to keep buying phones, particularly when we were already spending a ton of money on Teams. Plus, it just became a problem because our employees want to be able to use their personal phone to be able to handle business calls. I hate personal numbers being handed over for business. So we partnered up with a company called Call Tower. They were one of the first folks to do this, and they just provided a mechanism to route the plain switch telephone network to the GCC High cloud. Your users will keep their primary personal cell phone. There's no business and personal cell. Routing runs through the Teams app, so that way you can have an individual number for any employee you want, and you don't have to manage any hardware.
Okay, and not carrying two phones, just one phone, but it's kind of
Exactly.
divided, kind of a hard divide inside the operating system
Hmm.
or the app.
It should all
Okay,
be sitting in that device container and should be able to run compliantly.
very cool. Thank you for that. Anyone else want to share anything about phones? And I mean, why would a phone need to be controlled at all unless I mean, I guess if you allow people to check their emails or access SharePoint on a phone, there could be CUI viewed on the phone or transmitted on the phone.
That is correct. If CUI can be viewed, transmitted, or anything on the phone, it is in scope to a certain degree, so there has to be a control family that follows it. Now, if you're using Microsoft licensing, this can be easy. Just use Intune, deploy your device container, and then you can manage your applications from there. But as long as you're going to have Outlook and Teams, that means they're also going to have access to SharePoint. I mean, basically, if they can touch or view CUI, you just have to have some controls in place. There is no rule saying it can't be on a personal device. You just got to do it the right way.
Okay, interesting. Denny.
We're using Call Tower as well with
Oh, nice.
Taylor Call Tower. Yeah, they've been pretty good to work with. The Yealink phones that they claim they're not TAA compliant. That was one reason we were switching those. And that's our regular hard phones, hardwired phones to voice over IP, and then cell phones we control through Microsoft Intune, and then we'll have Teams calling app on them as well. And the big thing, you can use your Teams app through your cell phones to handle CUI. On Android, I'm an Android guy, so I've got a Samsung phone, and it separates. I don't know how iPhone works. Android, it separates a work side and a personal side, and they don't interact back and forth.
So, Denny, maybe others are curious. If you're using all that tech, including Call Tower, why are you needing to buy phones for people? Why can't they just use that app and keep it safe that way?
Still learning, but they said the Yealink that we have, and they're new from last year, said they're not TAA compliant, hardware wise. So
TA.
that and that came, I think that came from Call Tower. Um, so we're currently redoing our camera system to aid with some of the other CMMC and ITAR requirements. We've understood that the cameras, your switches, your endpoints for Wi-Fi, all that has to be TAA compliant. So that's the route we've gone. Now, if somebody tells me they're not, I'm not going to be very happy because they're quite a bit more expensive. But it is what it is. You know, we've done that, and that should cover us for hopefully. So,
All right. Well, let's move along. Speaking of files and where you can access them, you guys are spending tons of money to lock down your environments, but customers still keep emailing CUI, right? They just send a drawing straight across regular email. How do you handle that? Who wants to go first? Taylor, go ahead. You're unmuted.
The only thing we can do to handle it is have the SharePoint set up, tell them to put it where they should. If they don't follow instructions, we just annotate it on our side. We told them to do the right thing, and that's all we can do.
Okay. Any different answers from anyone else?
Same.
Same? Okay.
Yeah, the way I understood it, as long as you flow it down and make them aware of it, it covers you. That's the way we've understood it. Same thing Taylor said.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about a little more on the shop floor. We talked about how G-code has moved printing documents, printing file, printing drawings. How are people handling that?
I guess I can go because I already mentioned that by policy we restrict the printing of CUI. So for us, I mean, we're trying to go completely paperless. Obviously, you still need to print out travelers, but you don't need to include the drawing with the traveler. So we have tablets on the shop floor as well as a couple, endpoints that are not mobile. But we really like the using the tablets because, I mean, they're fast enough for what needs to be done and just using ProShop, and they're mobile. We did run into some issues. Like we tried using Apple devices. It was difficult to get those set up properly because you have to register them with Apple Business Manager, and then you have to connect your Apple Business Manager account to Intune, and we just ran into a lot of friction. So we ended up going the route of getting some Pixel tablets, but even then, there's still some friction. We had to, we weren't able to set these up for multiple users to use them. So each device is essentially assigned to a specific user, and if they were to leave, we would have to basically wipe the device and reassign it to someone else. But that's how we're handling, access to information.
Okay. Any other thoughts on drawings and printing of CUI?
Yeah, I've got a quick one. We just got rid of all the printers.
Okay.
And so the only printers in the company are in my office, in my wife's office, and there's one locked in a cabinet in the quality control room that only the manager has the key to.
Okay. So packing slips and that's about it. Everything else is.
I print those out in my office, and other than that, we don't need the paper. This is a completely paperless company.
Right. Okay. Taylor, Denny, any other comments on printing?
Just one. As far as printing goes, the less you do, the better off you're going to be. Just because it becomes a hassle once a CUI document is printed off. You have to make sure it's disposed of properly. You have to make sure you're enforcing your clean desk policy. If you can go paperless, go paperless. You're going to save yourself some headache. But if you can't, just understand you're going to get down to some policy level controls at the end of it. And that's just the cost of printing.
Okay. Awesome. I want to move and Tyler, ask you, since you already are certified, can you talk a little bit about what the audit was like versus what you expected? And then there was a question can you share anything about what it cost you to maybe prepare and the audit itself?
Well, I mean, I don't know if rates have come down for assessments, but I think the typical going rate right now for an assessment is like $30,000 to $50,000. Regardless of, I mean, that's the starting point. So if you have a larger company, a larger scope, and a longer assessment, it's only going to go up from there. Hopefully, as like more assessors enter into the ecosystem, those prices will go down, and maybe they already have. I don't know, but that's the last time I checked. That's what it was. And then as far as the assessment was concerned, I did expect that they were going to get up in our business in a big way. Obviously, I was nervous for the assessment because there's a lot of preparation and a lot of time and money went into it. I think what surprised me is the SSP is your guiding document for the assessment. It's what the assessor is going to consume and what they're going to use as the basis for your assessment. So making sure that you write a good compliance story in your SSP is really important. I think it'll make your assessment go much more smoothly. Like the less questions that they have to ask, the better. And, of course, there were certain controls that when those controls are being assessed, they did ask for objective evidence. And, we had like my assessment was fully remote because of our cloud-centric architecture, but they would, do screen share, and then we would go through different configuration settings inside of Intune and just kind of show that what was written in the SSP is what's being done. But it wasn't nearly as in depth as I was thinking it was going to be. So I guess that would be my advice: is just write, a good compliance story in your SSP. This is what the assessor is going to read and consume, so write it for your audience.
Okay. Very good. Let's see here. We have so many questions in the Q&A. Let's see here. I guess one that's worth talking about, with the initial costs and then the monthly ongoing costs of level 2, how does that affect your ability to work for companies that don't require CMMC? Are you trying to pass this all just to the shops that are the companies that do need it? I guess this feeds in another question. Are there NRE charges, cyber charges? How are you handling flowing this cost back to the people requiring it? Taylor, you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, this will probably be a little better for Mitch, but I mean, we still have our COTS items. We still have our commercial customers. We haven't turned anyone away. I will say it's different because the margins for the work that we're spending a lot more money to be able to do is always going to be more lucrative. But I mean, we've had local clients for, I mean, almost a decade now, and we haven't turned our back on them, but it can be hard when it costs this much to just keep the lights on in a shop to, I mean, justify a margin like that. I understand, but that's what we're doing.
Okay. Anyone else want to share what they're doing sort of on pricing? Or Denny, with that one customer who's now not in your top 5, but they were the ones pushing you, did you have any conversations with any customers about, costs with that cost?
Yeah, I mean, you always get those customers that complain about costs, and we just try to explain it. Listen, I mean, everything's went up, but the added expense and cost of getting to CMC level 2, and especially if they're requiring it, I mean, we can't do that on our own. It's because it's added overhead every year. So a lot of this is going to be annual cost. The upfront's bad enough, but then the annuals, it's the gift that keeps on giving for everybody. So we have to pass some of that along, and you just try to be more efficient internally to make up some of that as well. That way it's not hitting, especially your good customers. You don't want it to push them away, the ones you really want. And there may be some that, hey, maybe they look elsewhere. Maybe there's some shops that go completely commercial.
Right.
And that was, I mean, our employees asked that question. I sat down with all of our groups, different buildings, and a building at a time, because they tend to ask questions better when it's a smaller group, and just told them, said, listen, we can't afford not to go this way.
Sure.
We're to that point to where we're so into defense and aerospace that we have to go that way, and we're going to try to stay with our current commercial customers as well, and because they had questions about cell phones and things like that as well. Hey, because we restrict those a little bit anyways, not as so those are if you don't have Intune on your phone, it's not in the shop. period. Said, I'm not going to jail for anybody. I love you guys, but I'm not going to jail for any of you. So I would only do that for my wife or kids.
Okay.
So, I mean, and that's just kind of the way it is. And it's just explaining that to them, and they understand, they know what we do and who our customers
Sure.
are. So it's their livelihood. It pays for their insurance and helps their families out. So
Okay.
it's one of those things.
Yep. Thank you very much. Couple last questions before we need to do our final goodbyes. For someone out there that hasn't started writing their SSP, what would you suggest they do as a practical step starting right away? Maybe Tyler, if you'd take this one.
Well, for us, it was important to find, to get help, and we had to be careful about who we sought help from. I don't know. I mean, the ecosystem might be in a better place than it was when we started, but there were what felt like a lot of sharks in the water, a lot of people that maybe overpromise or don't. They weren't really like connected with the CMMC community or ecosystem. So get good help and make sure that that help is, in the know that they're qualified.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then maybe if any of you want to jump in and just unmute and answer this, if you could go back to the beginning, is there a check that you would not have written or something that you would have definitely done differently?
Yeah, I got a good one.
Okay.
When we first implemented this, the entire onus is put onto us as the shop owners, and the first thing that they do, and the guy warned me about this, the guy who came to do our first initial, was that his idea of how this should work and my idea of how this should work were always going to be diametrically opposed. I want everything to go fast, to be quick, to be easy to use, and he wants everything to be difficult, to be tough, and to be complicated. And I wish I had done a better job of pushing back on that premise, because now he's made it like people have to type in a 47,000 character password to use anything in this place, and you have to change it every 90 days. And if I had pushed back, and this is something, if we have enough time, I'd love to ask Taylor. Taylor, what do you think about the idea of switching from all of these manually analog passwords and stuff to, basically the same way I get into my phone? Like we could add 3D web cameras and, numeric passcodes or RFID badges to all of our inputs in our computers. Do you think that that would be compliant?
Well, it certainly can be. Are you using YubiKeys by chance for two-factor auth for ProShop?
We are.
Then you already have the strongest form of authentication that's commercially available at your fingertips. Start looking into the FIDO2 authentication protocol and using passkeys, because essentially you're going to put a pin on that YubiKey. You're going to hold your encryption keys in there. Your employees remember one pin. They carry that on them. Give them a backup if you can. And that's way easier than trying to remember a bunch of different passwords, following stringent password requirements. It satisfies all MFA requirements. And to this day, the FIDO2 authentication protocol has not been broken. It's the strongest form of auth we have.
Awesome. Yeah, that is what we were leaning towards. It's just too much for a lot of the guys.
Using a YubiKey?
No,
The other stuff. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen people put YubiKeys just on a lanyard that kind of comes back to their belt every time, so they can stick it in, do it, and then sticks right back to their belt. So, all right. Well, for any of you, if you have not started your journey, or if you're in a journey that you're maybe a little uncertain about, of course, we'd love to help you out. Feel free to scan that code to book a call with us, or just go to our website. Thank you all so much for joining us. All these guys were generous enough to share their email addresses. So if you have a specific question for them, feel free to reach out to them. And I don't know if those QR codes are to LinkedIn or to what, but you can try that as well. Sorry we didn't get to all the questions. Maybe we'll do another one of these. It seems to be popular, and just too much to fit into 1 hour. But gentlemen, thank you so much. I really appreciate everything, helping us prep for this and being here today, all the insights that you shared. It's, as you can tell from the questions and the comments, it is valuable to the industry, to the audience. So appreciate it, everybody. And we're going to wrap this one up, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Have a great day, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.